everyone, we're happy to present our project on the topic of Saudi Arabia. Let's start with economic history. Before creation of Saudi Arabia, regions had different industries and crafts. The Western province was specialized in trade and offered a variety of services, including taxation for Muslim pilgrims. The Eastern province has an agricultural industry, mainly growing dates. Historically, the state depended on breeding cattle, and geographical locations made it a significant trade route, highlights Metz 1992. In local villages, craftsmen produced all the essential items needed for domestic use. Now we'll discuss the Marxist theory in the scope of Saudi Arabia. The pre-class society was made of tribes who dominated the Arabian Peninsula. The kingdom also had an Asiatic society, common for many Oriental states. Arabs had a nomadic way of life or formed autonomous villages around sources of water. Tribal anarchy transformed into a central state with the royal family in charge. Marxist theory is very linear and cannot be applied to Saudi Arabia as to other European nations. The Arabian economy started to develop only a few decades ago with the expansion of the state. It is a unique case. Country is not fully capitalist since the role of the government in the economy is increasing, especially since the 1950s. In addition, private property is illegal. Socialism is not applicable because Saudi Arabia's main goal of the government is to develop the economy and at the same time preserve Islamic values. Before the creation of a modern state, territories belonged to the Ottoman Empire. The region was not greatly affected by Ottomans because they did not have material interest in the territory, underlines after 2021. Saudi Arabia was never a colony of the European powers. However, expansion influenced the country. For example, Arab merchants benefited from international trade. Saudi Arabia started industrializing in the 1930s when crude oil was discovered. This led to an establishment of an Arabian-American oil company, which changed the traditional production of goods and services. In the first decades after the birth of Saudi Arabia, the government did not implement any strategies to speed up industrialization. The 70s is often called an oil boom, as Saudi Arabia drastically increased its export and began setting its own oil prices because the government invested in refineries and processing plants. Another policy was the attraction of FDI, which allowed the country to obtain technologies and capital. In 1980, the company was fully nationalized after a long period of negotiations. By the 1990s, Saudi Arabia was one of the most industrialized economies in the Middle East. However, it solely relied on petroleum. Private sector lagged behind. Geographical factor which affected Saudi Arabia's development is oil reserves located in the east, accounting for 1/3 of world's total oil supply, according to Stutz and Warf 2011. History also influenced industrialization. Interwar period increased demand for petroleum, thus motivating American engineers to look for oil abroad, which started industrialization. Joining OPEC in 1960 allowed Saudi Arabia to dominate the world oil market. Iranian Revolution of 1970 caused an oil crisis, thus exports were disrupted, allowing Saudi Arabia to raise its prices. To conclude, the heterogeneity of regions influenced the variety of human activities. Saudi Arabia transformed from tribal economy to oil-based economy. Marxist theory is Eurocentric, thus Saudi Arabia did not pass through all modes of production. It's one of the few countries worldwide not colonized by Europeans. Saudi Arabia began industrialization fairly late in comparison to European states. Efficient investment policies made the country the largest exporter of petroleum worldwide. Now I'm passing a word to my colleague Sonia.
Thank you, Katya. Now I'm going to tell you about resources, economic and social structure. The main natural resources are oil, gas, coal, and several types of non-metallics. As it was previously said, the use of oil started with its discovery in 1938 and foundation of Aramco. According to Metz, currently oil production dominates in the country's economy in terms of revenue. All gas is distributed to demand centers around the country. Country continues its expansion in oil and gas sectors. By the early 1980s, metallic resources had been discovered, although commercial mining was still restricted. There is still sufficient space for gold resources to be discovered. The country also has enough non-metallic resources that are very beneficial in commercial area. Saudi Arabia, in terms to prepare for the energy transition, is currently investing in technologies that generate environmentally safe energy. Now let's talk about sectors of the economy. Major resource of natural resources allowed Saudi Arabia's economy experience a high increase in the industry sector. The tertiary sector has great government spendings, wholesale and retail trade. Saudi Arabia can be characterized as a developing country as major GDP shares are composed of the industry and the services sectors, and most people are working in these sectors. Major industries are located on the Red Sea and Persian Gulf coasts. The extraction of oil is profitable as it's located closer to the surface and on the land. However, the development of gold mines is quite challenging as the Central Arabian gold region is in a remote area and water availability is limited. Let's move to the labor force. We can see an increase in labor force participation as the government established new labor policies to make a favorable working environment for Saudi residents. As people work mostly in big industrial cities, there is a problem of unemployment in smaller ones. Speaking about education, as Rahman and Al Hassan state, despite high literacy ranking and huge government spendings, there are such problems as outdated educational system and strong hierarchy between teacher and students. Let's move to the social structure. Despite the positive yearly population growth rate, compared to neighboring countries, it's one of the lowest, as number of births is falling. Taking into consideration all the rates, we can make a conclusion that KSA is on the third stage of demographic transition. As we can see, male population is prevailing in Saudi Arabia due to the fact that men immigrants are searching for economic prospects and there is a lack of women's law. Life expectancy and median age are relatively high due to a good quality of life, and also it means that there is a rise in older population. Most of the population is concentrated in big cities with main industries where immigrants can find jobs. Some regions are not populated due to vast desert areas. Therefore, there is a problem of uneven settlement of population. In conclusion, the discovery of natural resources predetermined the development of the state's economy. Saudi Arabia can expand its economy by diversifying and exporting non-oil goods as well. Countries still should regulate regional unemployment and solve the problems of educational system. Influx of immigrants and residents of the country into cities contributes to the rapid pace of urbanization of the country because country has big holds of GDP in the industry. Let my colleague Mikhail continue.
Thanks, Sofia. Now I would like to speak about the economic position and development of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia showed positive growth in GDP according to the General Authority for Statistics. After the destructive pandemic consequences, it's a very high result. Demographic rates slowed down in growth, whereas economic rates became higher. And this trend is continuing because the need for crude oil on the global market is becoming higher every quarter. GDP per capita, or the KCA, also shows a growth in 2021. The reason for this rapid growth, as statistics from the World Bank shows, is growth in oil activities. In comparison with Iran and Egypt, Saudi Arabia has the best rates of GDP per capita. Moreover, it moves up the kingdom on a scale that is seriously sharper than in other taken countries. This happens because of the most dependence between oil market and GDP per capita. Another important part of the plan of the Saudi Arabia's development is HDI. Now it has slowed down its tempo, however it is still growing. The cause of this progress is an increase in life expectancy by 6 years and an increase in time spent in education by more than 5 years, highlights UNDP 2020. Comparing it to other four regions, Saudi Arabia ranks the highest. Saudi Arabia has increased its HDI level, which can be explained by industrialization of the country, where oil revenues were invested into social projects. Several inequalities can be pointed out in Saudi Arabia. There is an apparent problem between the rich and the poor. About 20% of the people live in poverty, highlights Morgan Projects 2017. This can be explained by the fact that Aramco belongs to the government and the majority of the income goes to the royal family. There is also strong gender inequality. Women evidently do not have the same economic opportunities as men. Large proportion of the female population lives in poverty. This can be explained by strong patriarchal views which still exist in Saudi Arabia. Despite these problems, poverty levels are still higher in other regions. The growth in some periods of the 21st century has shown slow increase. This tendency can be explained by the fact that the majority of the investments are capital intensive. Despite the COVID-19 consequences, a lot of Saudi nationals, especially women, are taking new occupations because of their new labor policy. However, foreigners mostly left their occupations, and that led to an insane decrease in the level of the labor market. To compare trade openness rate with the latest average world value, Saudi Arabia's is far less. Saudi Arabia's world ranking of trade openness is just 112 out of 174. In addition, Saudi Arabia has the highest rates with Iran, unlike other countries. Here we can make a simple conclusion. Kingdom Saudi Arabia is less exposed to international trade because most companies are governmental. Analyzing data for import, we can say that Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has lower number for import, so it is less dependent on imported goods compared to neighbors. Moreover, export rates have decreased, although it is still the highest in comparison with other states. Main export partners of Saudi Arabia are China, India, and last year the exports to Asian parts of the world, such as Japan and South Korea, expanded. Saudi Arabia imports the most from China, United Arab Emirates, and United States. Saudi Arabia's favorable challenge is to be sure that products go to different markets. Long-term accession will open up the Saudi economy to greater transparency. It will allow Saudi exporters non-discriminatory access to WTO countries. Thanks to the GCC, all companies in the kingdom can access to the GCC common market. As for the GAFTA, non-tariff measures are likely to remain important barriers to regional integration because it's only for merchandise trade. Main challenges of Saudi Arabia are the crisis after COVID-19 and the price of barrels going down. Despite the fact that the government put that problem on the first place of importance, it is not passing so easily as social subsidies were cut down and it affected the poor. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the fast-paced developing countries in the Arabian world, and with the realization of all their ambitious ideas, they will definitely reach all their economic goals. In comparison with other countries such as Egypt, Yemen, and Iran, Saudi Arabia has had better growth in almost all indicators. Nowadays, Saudi Arabia holds a policy of non-interference in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and refuses to dialogue with the US and the European Union about additional oil supply. Consequently, that means Saudi Arabia's economic policy is strong enough to be more closed and trade open, even though they integrate in some cases to the outer world.